So I was thinking yesterday about how I've always fought the idea of doing less things because I've always been naturally curious and it's been relatively easy for me to learn new things. Now, that comes as a blessing and a curse because at the end of the day, it's good to learn new things. It's beneficial even because you can convert yourself, you can turn yourself into anything you need to be so that you get to fit into any environment that you put yourself in. Now, the problem with that is that at some point it starts becoming a problem because the more things you accumulate and the more things that you have to do, the more energy you have to dedicate to these things. And that means that you have less energy to do each one of them. So, as an example, I've always been interested in art. And I picked up digital art maybe 5 years ago and tried to do a couple of things in it. Then I'm also interested in languages. I speak like five or six of them at different levels. I also want to not forget them. And so I have to practice and keep up with them so that all the energy and effort and sacrifice I've gone through to learn them and get to a level where I can know them as much as I do, I don't want all that to be in vain. And so I have to dedicate time to that. And also, I'm trying to manage a new maintenance company, and that means that I have to know a few things that will help me to do my job right. And being one of the first employees means that I need to be an accountant and everything that it means to manage a new startup, right? Other than that, you have family that you have to talk to and maintain relationships with, and you have friends and things like that. And then you have all the other new things that you get curious about that you also want to dedicate time to. And eventually you find yourself busy all the time. And as you grow, that starts becoming a problem because every new thing that you take on, especially when it involves other people, it starts becoming a responsibility. And then you have to be accountable. And every new thing you take on almost becomes like a promise that you have to follow through with. And then eventually, you don't have time to become really good at any one thing. Now, I get the argument that a master of all is better than a master of one, something like that, right? Now, if you can find a way to utilize the skills that you have amassed and the knowledge that you've gained by being curious about very many different things, then by all means, because at the end of the day, your curiosity has to, at some point, become a tool that you use in the service of a bigger goal, a bigger purpose, if you may. And so, if you find a bigger purpose that you can use your curiosity, your curiosities rather, and the knowledge that you've gained in different facets of life and different aspects of what you do or what you've involved yourself in, then by all means, because now it's you're not just curious about random things, you're curious about things that maybe help you attain a unified goal. So as far as your goal is goes, right? As far as your goal goes, you're focused. And focus I feel like is essential if you want to compound anything to a point where you've built something meaningful, something worth being remembered for, or something to leave behind. Almost like a legacy, if you may. I don't know. But I think if you don't converge to a place where you're using these curiosities to go deeper into one goal and one thing, and you keep getting scattered and leaving things to go to the next thing and the next and the next, eventually you'll know just enough about very many things, but you'll not be able to do anything substantial, which, unless that is your goal, you have to, at some point, start narrowing things down. And I feel like the benefit of curiosity, usually, for me at least, it has been to explore and discover what's out there, right? And to discover my interests and things that I could maybe try to get good at. And I've learned a lot of things along the way because of that kind of thinking. But I feel like it has to get to a point where you're curious about the application of what you've learned, right? It's is what you're curious about useful, or can it be? Or can you make it useful? So you can be curious about that aspect of anything rather than being curious about things and skills and what you can do. You can be curious about what you can now do with all the skills that you've collected and gathered and learned and the knowledge that you have. You can be curious about going deeper into using those to solve problems that get you closer to this bigger purpose or goal that you have, right? And so I feel like I was reading this book, Essentialism, a few years ago, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And it was romantic, right? To think about how you could narrow everything down and cut everything and leave just the one thing. There's another book I think also called The One Thing. So they speak more or less about the same thing, which is focus, right? Now, reading them, it was romantic to want to conform to that school of thinking, but it's easier said than done, because when you have many interests and you can learn more than a few things, then it feels it feels like you become a sellout when you decide to end everything in service of only one thing. Now, maybe that's the way to be super successful at that one thing. But now the question is, what does that really mean to you? And if it's meaningful to you, then you do it for long enough, it becomes a source of joy. But if cutting everything down and leaving only this one thing or one activity or one skill or one dimension of yourself, if that doesn't make you happy, not happy really, but that doesn't give you the satisfaction of feeling like you're doing something meaningful, then I don't see the point. And so for me, I think the the middle is using what you've learned in service of a bigger purpose, right? A bigger goal. And so you don't really have to cut things down more than direct them towards attaining this one big outcome. And so, and also now that gets you to focus on compounding these skills or compounding knowledge so that you can be able to use these things that you've collected, that you've learned meaningfully in the attainment of this goal and become better at them, because now your curiosity is about going deeper into these singular things rather than finding new things to add to the basket. And maybe from time to time you find new things that you can add to your skill set, or the basket of things that you know, but maybe that this time will be guided by solving problems and getting stuck in the journey to solving this bigger goal and attaining a purpose. Bye.